Hey everyone, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 20th of November, 2022. And on today's show, we recap an electric weekend in the Big 12. TCU stays undefeated with some dramatics against Baylor. Texas rolls behind Bijan Robinson. Kansas State is one win away from the Big 12 title. Texas Tech is going bowling, and also Oklahoma rules Bedlam once again. That's all coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. If this is your first time on the channel, no, I did not normally sound like this. There was no show on Friday, and I waited as long as I could today. Folks, the weather in my neck of the woods on the East Coast has changed very, very rapidly. And when it does that, I sometimes fall victim. My vocal cords do. So no show on Friday because I sounded worse than this. Waited as long as I could today because I love doing these reaction shows. I know you guys like them too. So waited about as long as I could to do this. Waited till 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central to do it. So I apologize if the voice is not as good, as strong as it normally is. If it tails off towards the back end, I apologize. Doing the best I can. Wanted to make sure you guys had a show for reactions, and react we will. Let's get to it. Once again, if you guys are new to the channel, do not normally sound like this. Normally everything sounds good. We're normally 6 days a week. So hopefully you guys will hear the recovery of my voice throughout the week. Not TCU can win a playoff game. We know that they're, that's yet to be seen at this point. The story out of this Saturday, the Frogs keep winning. On a day that was filled with close calls for the top teams, right? Even Georgia won by 10 against a pretty down Kentucky team. We also saw Michigan get pushed to the brink by Illinois, right? And Illinois is not some offensive juggernaut. They've actually been sputtering as of late, right? Ohio State didn't look good for large swaths of the game against Maryland, ultimately able to take the control, but still, they gave up 17 fourth quarter points. So it wasn't like everything was ho-hum for them. Tennessee, not a close call there. They get smoked. Obviously USC and UCLA in a really great game. Utah, Oregon, etc. All of these were awesome. I would say USC, UCLA had the most firepower kind of back and forth, but the ending that TCU and Baylor delivered is maybe one of the more consequential things that we will see when it comes to the forward trajectory of the Big 12, right? Of what it means for this conference now and in the future. To see TCU up against the wall and down Kendre Miller, down Quentin Johnston, and then I'm trying to think about who else. So Kendre Miller, Quentin Johnston, and Darius Davis were all out of the game in that second half. To see them rally the way they did was, and really Max Duggan, the way he rallied the team was so impressive. For them to run that fire drill at the end of the game to get the kicker on the field and able to make that kick, it was unbelievable. And I silly me, I thought they were done. I thought at one point they were done. And the drop 2-point conversion, I was thinking, man, Baylor's run the ball so effectively today. That could be the nail in the coffin for them. And it wasn't. They're able to get that stop, able to make sure Shapen came up short, get the ball back, and Max Duggan was just so determined. And sure, USC being back will grab the storylines. Tennessee getting throttled is majorly important. And because that the TCU game was the first game of the day, it kind of gets lost in our memories, right? It's kind of not what we think of off the top of our heads. I mean, what a psychotic, unbelievably crazy, just out of your mind finish for a team that just can't seem to lose. Like, that they, even if they try, they can't seem to lose. And look, I mentioned the injuries earlier. I know every single team's had injuries, but for TCU to suffer them in the course of a game on the road in that spot, and for their quarterback who's played a million football games, he's not a Spencer Rattler type talent. He's not a Caleb Williams type talent. He's a really good player. And then for him to lose all those guys and to elevate all of the guys around him and to make the plays and make the throws after getting knocked down and whatnot. I mean, I was really impressed. It was Savion Williams, and when we saw a whole lot of Gunnar Henderson, right? I know he's been a target for them as well too. A Battle get a couple catches. I mean, they just had guys all over the place. Trent Battle is just a freshman for them, and he saw some significant playing time out there. Finally found Jared Wiley late on in this game. For him to step up, to elevate the game, to do it, and you could see the not the relief, but just the sense of pride and victory at Sonny Dykes and Max Duggan shared after the game. And I think Max, I believe was hugging his father. What a great embrace that was. To hear people talk about Max Duggan is really interesting. Like, the idea that, hey, he lost the starting quarterback job. And it seems like, wherever that competitive fire was, whatever kept him on track, is actually buried deep inside like we all think it is. Because whenever you hear him talk, it's never like, I was angry and I had to prove it. It was always just about staying ready. It's always about the team. You ask him about the college football playoff rankings, and he's like, I actually had homework. I wasn't watching. He wasn't, looking at extra motivation about them putting TCU too far down. He's really this compelling character. And it was funny to see Rattler go off yesterday and Caleb Williams go off yesterday and Duggan doing the game yesterday, because these are all three guys that were obviously Big 12 adjacent, both Rattler and Sanders, obviously, at OU together. And we saw their talent sometimes when, they go off to other places. It's gone better for Williams, I think, the eventual Heisman, than it has for Rattler. But just to kind of think about like these guys we saw all play last year, to see Duggan with all the questions we had about him get benched, to see Caleb Williams recognize his Heisman potential yesterday, to see Rattler have really a lot of struggles and then, have a nuclear game like he had last night, and to see Duggan be benched and then be this guy where it's like this complete player all of a sudden, is a remarkable kind of change from where we were last year, to see this stuff all play out. But I think Max's story is probably the third most important in the national, kind of story, because of the USC going to the playoff, and also, South Carolina beating Tennessee, and what a story. Tennessee's was kind of just on the way to the playoff, and now they're not, obviously, unless something were really to go haywire, right? But Max's effort has kept TCU right in this hunt. TCU now has a game at home against Iowa State to ice this thing. And look, they've got problems. They keep playing close calls, but they just do not seem to lose. There was some questionable coaching there at the end of the game, I thought, from Dave Aranda and from Sonny Dykes. Not sure we love the fire drill there, to get Griffin Kell on the field, who, look, missed a big extra point earlier in the game. But it worked, and it worked out for TCU. And despite that miss, despite the injuries, despite the non-conversion on a 2-point, the non-conversion, the 2-pointer, they were able to get the ball back, get the job done, get into range. And I'm wowed. I'm wowed. And if you go back and listen to the call on television from Jason Benetti and Brock Heward, like their reaction was similar to mine. Brian Estridge, who for my money is the best play-by-play guy in the Big 12. There's a lot of good ones, right? You like Wyatt Thompson, if you like Craig Way, if you like all those guys, like, it's fantastic. I think they're really good. John Morris, love them all. We got a lot of good play-by-play guys in this league. I think, in my opinion, Brian Estridge is the best, and his call yesterday was absolute money too. But just the bewilderment, the kind of wonder that everybody's had watching this team. It's not a Cinderella run, though. And I keep saying this, like, sure, it might come crashing down in the end. But these guys are really good. They're just a really good football team, and sometimes really good football teams lose, but this one just doesn't. This one has decided to be great and not to give it up in any of those situations, to not give in no matter who is on the field, who is not on the field, what the situation, what the down and distance, what the clock says, what the clock's ticking, and we have to do this. I mean, it's just, like their games are just they're on drugs, man. And you see the video they tweeted out yesterday, the whatever it is, just barely.mp4, and you're going, it's this ballistic wild ride you're watching. And that's what it feels like to watch TCU football. It's a perfect encapsulation, but this team is there and they keep going, and they got a really good chance at 12-0 next week. An awesome chance at 12-0. More on Baylor later on in the week, and obviously more on TCU later on in the week. Would keep hammering home what was this tremendous game. And, I think Kansas TCU was awesome. I think I'm trying to think what else was other game of the year competitors. Oh, TCU Oklahoma State was amazing. This one, because of what was involved and what it meant, this was my favorite Big 12 game of the year. Baylor and TCU was my favorite Big 12 game of the year this year. Once again, your mileage might vary, but I think because of what it was at stake, what the situation was, when it was happening, and the way it ended, this was the game of the year to me. Let's go Kansas State now. They stay on schedule. And what do you mean, Josh, on schedule late in the season here? Well, they need 2 wins they needed 2 wins. They now need 1 win to completely ice their spot in the Big 12 title game. And they got win number 1 was down yesterday. And what was a really odd game, 14-0 start, Deuce Vaughn touchdown, pick 6, which gets us to 14-0. Then we get a West Virginia touchdown followed by a West Virginia pick 6 on a, let's be frank, bad Will Howard throw. And then Kansas State kind of goes ahead there. I mean, the Kansas State ends up scoring 41 points in that first half. What's awesome about them, and look, I don't think they ran the ball with unbelievable efficiency yesterday. Deuce was 22 for 67 and a touchdown. Giddens was 12 for 78 and a touchdown. I will say this, though. On the big touchdown runs they hit, like their offensive line execution is bananas. It's absolutely spectacular to watch how those guys just execute. And the running backs do a great job. I mean, I've mentioned they've had some problems, especially with Martinez. You go back to that Texas Tech game early in the year. Like if they weren't hitting these massive run plays on the ground, they really weren't, it wasn't an awesome offense to watch. It's gotten better with Will Howard, but still the explosive running game is kind of where they make a lot of their hay, and they did at times in this game. But the one thing when you watch Will Howard is the ability to involve everybody else, right? Noel, and this one was particularly a big Malik. It was a huge Malik Knowles game. But you get Sennett involved, Wheeler, Brooks, Warner. I mean, this is not the craziest, deepest receiving core in the league, right? But everybody's available. Everyone's an option. Deuce, Giddens, Wheeler, Sennett, Brooks, Knowles, they're all the Warner, they're all available. And he loves to use those tight ends. He does a great job, especially on the outside the numbers. He's really good at getting the ball to those guys, and his arm has gotten better. And I think he's become, he's got like NFL intangibles. Throwing the ball a lot harder too. 19 for 27 for 294, 2 scores, INT. Obviously, we talked about the INT, right? And 4 carries, 6 yards, touchdown. They had the sneak that got him in the end zone. You kind of watch that. I mean, yes, they give up a lot in the run game. And I think I was wrong. I kind of mentioned, hey, is their offense better off with him and Will Howard because they're going to lose a lot of, Martinez, because they're going to lose a lot of that rushing attack? The answer is yes. The answer is this offense is better off. Did Martinez have some superhuman games, especially against OU? Yeah, but this offense generally is a lot better. What I will say is, as it pertains to playing TCU, this one was concerning because Sam James caught 3 balls and all 3 were touchdowns. They could not cover him, and they've got better receivers, better receivers than Sam James on the other side when they play TCU, if they play TCU. So there are definitely some concerns there with the secondary about when it comes to Kansas State and their ability to cover. And you see, TCU, no matter how many times you sack them, they are very, 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 very steadfast in their desire to throw the football down the field, and they'll take those shots. And I think that's something that's a little bit concerning, but TCU is going to have to cover this offense as well. This was a dangerous, dangerous group today. They turned over Garrett Green a couple times, which was obviously pretty big. And then they're able to win this game. It was around a 2-score game, as kind of got in the second half there. And it felt like it was never really in doubt for Kansas State because they could always pull out some more points when they needed to. But that first half is the reason why, man. I mean, it was a weird first half. It was a fun first half, but they end up 10.9 per pass play. I mean, that's 10.9, basically 11 yards per attempt is pretty awesome. 3.4 on the ground, not as good. But look, that's the thing, is they're not just reliant on their running game now. The pass game is such a weapon. Let's talk about somebody's run game. It's really, really good. Bijan does a Bijan. Guys, I mentioned this, this was the spot where you wanted to use Bijan Robinson. He had a bad week last week. Quinn Ewers did not look good at all. And so the best thing they could do here was feed Bijan Robinson and get this guy back on track. 25 carries for 200, and 43 yards. Losing that voice already. On the day for him. 4 touchdowns. He was fantastic. And also they got Jonathan Brooks the ball in the second half. The freshman ran for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns, 427 rushing yards and 6 scores. Jalen Daniels came back in this game, and they wiped off a touchdown early on that kind of got them back in the game because of an eligible man downfield. Didn't love that call, but it would not have mattered. Texas, they were angry. They needed to win this game. And look, maybe Jalen Daniels needed this game to get back to, back into shape just a little bit, just to get himself ready to go for next week for Sunflower, right? But I think Jason Bean was a better option here because Texas's defense has been one of the better defenses in the entire league. But they do a really good job of stopping the run. And so you're concerned about what that means for a guy like Jalen Daniels, who needs that rushing game to be a part of that kind of all-encompassing offense. So hopefully this kind of helps him getting, moving forward as they make that choice. But once again, Kansas is going to a bowl game. Their season's successful. Texas 7-4. They have now guaranteed that they're going to be 2 games better than they were last year. Quinn Ewers still didn't have to do much in this game, which makes next week's game against Baylor very intriguing. Noon on ESPN on Friday. It's a Friday game between Baylor and Texas. And once again, Texas, if they win this game, because it's the Friday noon game, they've got a chance to put pressure on Kansas State. Not that Kansas State's going to feel it anyway. I think Kansas State, they kind of go to the attitude like we got to beat Kansas at home anyway. To talk about our results or whatever, our push for the Big 12 title, like we got to beat Texas or Kansas at home regardless. We got to beat Kansas at home, for rivalry purposes, for how we feel about our season and how it's moving right now, and just getting ourselves into the postseason. Like that's what it's all. That they have to play well anyway. But Texas can apply a little extra pressure, right? If they win this game, they will apply a little bit extra pressure when it comes down to the Big 12 title race. So the big opportunity for them to do it in this game. And Bijan, what an amazing player he is. A privilege to watch. And I'm pretty excited for Baylor Texas next week. It's an interesting game. We saw Max Duggan had to win the game for them last week. And I know it's a different situation, right? I know the guy in the backfield for Texas a little bit better, than the situation at TCU, especially with Kendre Miller out. But I want to see that Baylor defense press some buttons and try to get Quinn Ewers under pressure, because it's weird seeing Texas at 7-4 and a chance to go 8-4 and potentially even in the Big 12 championship game. And right now, their quarterback, who was decent yesterday, is that biggest question mark they have right now. Right, that's the biggest question mark they have, despite the fact that they absolutely railroaded Kansas yesterday by a final score of, is 55-14. Also, I didn't mention the final scores across the board. 29-28 for TCU over Baylor. Kansas State 48-31. Texas 55-14. Let's go to Bedlam now. Oklahoma rules Bedlam once again. This Oklahoma State team really has fallen off. And once again, I know they're injured and whatnot, but that defense does not look good. Spencer Sanders, I know he's injured, but had a really bad game. But it just shows you, like, if he has a bad game, their day's over. 381 yards. He threw the ball. Guys, he's injured. He threw the ball 67 times. Oklahoma's run defense has been horrible this year. And this was their best game. 35 carries for Oklahoma State. 103 yards. Okay? And they were not able to run the football at all against what's been a horrible rushing defense. 9th in the league, I think. And only behind them is KU. Sanders throws 4 interceptions, obviously trying to force things, felt the pressure. So good job in Oklahoma's defense. If you're OU, you got to feel frustrated. You got to feel really frustrated because this defense was capable of this, or some version of this, at different points this year and was not able to display it, not able to show it. Right. In this game, I mean, look, guys, this was really close to being a 1-score game late in the game, right? Their offense, like, there wasn't this like some magical offensive day that Oklahoma had. I mean, all things considered, 434 total yards, and actually Oklahoma State outgained them but 434 total yards, and also 1 for 14 on third down. Like, this Oklahoma offense was not great, but Oklahoma State gave them 4 extra possessions, and they were always going to win that game if that was the case, right? It was always going to win that game. This offense, still for OU, not at peak efficiency, right? But Oklahoma State just, the mistakes for them and the poor play at times for them has really just killed the back part of this season. And this game was Sanders. It was on Sanders, right? But it was not going to be a better result than the other guys in there. It's just a team that's young in the wrong spots right now. Then that back end's injured. They're young in the back end. Their linebacking core is not as good as yesterday. They have multiple guys up front who are missing, right? Their quarterback's banged up. The running back's banged up. They're using a couple freshmen yesterday at that running back position, right? That's, yesterday we saw Sanders, Nixon, Johnson, Gordon, all getting carries, no Dominic Richardson. And so there was a variety of guys who have to get the ball for them, but they just cannot run the football. It's just not been their bread and butter at all. They've not been able to incorporate that. And so they have an injured quarterback last week who had to play Superman the previous week, who was doing interviews this week with ice on his shoulder and, not able to, I thought they'd run the ball somewhat. And also, I feel like plus 7.5 might not have been the wrong call here. Once again, despite those 4 turnovers, they had a chance to tie the game up near the goal line before another Sanders turnover happened. So it wasn't like Oklahoma State was totally out of this game. It was a weird one. It was a weird bedlam. It was hard to make sense of, but in the end, Oklahoma is going bowling. And right now, that's big for them just to get more practices because, good Lord, does this team need them. I don't think we're going to see many guys, off this team be able to go to the next level, go to the NFL, especially if some guys had some designs, but I'm not sure they could. Some players, yes, Eric Gray, I think we'll see later on to the next level, as he should be. Fantastic season, for him this year. But the other guys, there are a lot of questions for them. Obviously, this offense needs to be more refined at certain times. They want to, get this thing working where it needs to be. But Oklahoma State's been a confusing team. Great effort from OU in this one to get Bedlam back. And there's a reason why Mike Gundy might want to keep playing this game. Texas Tech, we'll wrap up real quickly here, is going bowling. They yank out a 13-play, 77-yard drive led by Tyler Shuck in the end of this game on the road to go and put themselves in the Big 12 championship game. Big 12 championship game. Into a bowl game, postseason. 14-10. Final score in this one. But Iowa State not going bowling. They in West Virginia right now. The two teams that are not going to be going bowling, so at this point in time, that is what's, left there. Those two teams are out. Everybody else is going to be heading to a bowl game this season. We got the 8 in, which is exciting and fun to see. But Tech gets the job done here with a late, awesome drive. Zach Kitley getting that ball into space, getting those guys rolling downfield. And once again, we saw it. There are going to be some conversations about Iowa State and about Matt Campbell, guys. And I think we have to understand at a place like Iowa State, like when you lose that many guys, and don't get me wrong, their defense has been awesome this year. But when you lose as many guys as Iowa State did, it's nearly impossible to reload and restock and maintain and keep going. Kirk Ferentz seems to do it at Iowa, but Iowa State still isn't at that Iowa level yet, right? Iowa was in games recently. They've been to Rose Bowls as of late. They have been to, they've been in Big 10 championship games with a chance to go to a college football playoff in the last, 10, 12 years or so. Right. And so that is not something that is happening a whole lot at Iowa State. And so if you want to talk about Matt Campbell, the program builder, he's done a great job, but you might throw a 4-8, 5-7 in there right now because look, Hunter Deckers sounded really good and it is not very good. And the running back situation there is not very good. And their offensive line has been good. They got one awesome wide receiver. And their defense, the defense holds Texas Tech to 14 points, 246 total yards of offense, 3 of 13 on third down, 6.7 yards per passing play, 2.8 yards per rush play. They forced a turnover and won the turnover battle. They gave their offense the ball for 36 minutes and 5 seconds, and they still lost the damn game because the offense is not there yet. And this is something that happens sometimes. Is this a bad season? Yeah, but it's still Iowa State. And these are going to be thrown in there. I totally expect for them to come back next year and be better than this. but some of these are going to be thrown in there sometimes when you had that good of a team the previous year. So don't panic too much. To finish up, Joey McGuire and company, great job reaching a bowl game with the quarterback carousel, the injuries they had, and some kind of unsure thoughts about what's happening on the defensive side of things. For them to do this, it was very, very, very impressive for them to fight their way into a bowl game, for their defense to mostly do it in this game as well. And once another 100-yard receiving game for Xavier Hutchinson. But, Texas Tech, like in year one for Joey McGuire, for them now to have a chance to win a 7th game, maybe an 8th game, that is a really great place to be. And I think Tech is in an awesome situation here, as they kind of come down the stretch. And also not sure about like Matt Campbell punting in the end of that game. I know how much time was left. It was a 4th and 15, but like, do you really want to give the ball back to them? I'm not really sure it's the best spot to do it. I don't know, whatever. It's just me. But yeah, Texas Tech going to a bowl game is a big accomplishment in year one. They're going to have a chance to win at least 7 games, have a winning record. That's awesome for year one, especially considering I think they're going to hang on to Zach Kittley unless some other job comes open that really, really wants him. I think they're going to be able to kind of keep that defense going in the right direction. I know they're going to lose Tyree Wilson, but the offense too is going to improve. That recruiting class is looking pretty good for Texas Tech standards right now. So they're going to have a chance to keep bringing in guys and keep building things at Texas Tech. That's a very good start and a big win, and also a chance to get win number 7 against outgoing power. Well, not really power this year, but outgoing team in Oklahoma at the end. All right. My voice is hanging on by a thread. So that will do it for today's show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can find me at @JoshNeighbors_. Hopefully the show will be a bit more organized and my voice will be back and I won't be freaking out later on in the week. I apologize for that. But please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you guys think in the comments section. Until next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.